Welcome to the Social Engineer podcast, the Human Element Series, episode 157. I'm Chris Hadnagy. Today I'm going to call myself Christopher because our guest said she likes that better. So a founder and CEO of Social Engineer LLC, social-engineer.org, and the Innocent Lives Foundation. I've been hosting this podcast since 2009. 2009. Wow. I was going to say 2012, but it's actually 2009. I'm really old. This episode is sponsored by social-engineer.com or Social Engineer LLC. We are a premier vendor in the cybersecurity space, focusing on the human vector. You can't turn on the news at all without seeing another breach. And according to the Verizon DBI report, over 86% of those breaches are somewhere resultant of the human factor. Phishing, vishing, smishing, these things are still sadly commonplace and used in everyday breaches. So we focus on helping companies learn what those vectors are, how to recognize them, how to report them properly, and how to stop them in their tracks. You could check things out on social-engineer.com to see what kind of things that we can offer for you. And did you know that we run a Slack channel? If you're not familiar with it, the show notes contains the link to join. There's over 1,000 people in there right now talking about everything from the psychology of social engineering all the way down to actual pretext and vectors that they try. We've had 7 people find jobs through our career board on there. So it's a really hopping place. You can jump into hopping. Wow, that dated me right there. That's a weird word. I'm going to start saying wicket next. Okay, so let's move on from that. We're not even going to cut that. Leave that in. That's how bad that is. We're going to leave that mess in. But that leads us right to the best part, which is saying you better check out Clutch. Pro-rock.com, best rock and roll band on the planet Earth. And they are the intro music for this podcast if you're listening to it on Spotify or one of the other audio providers. If you're on YouTube, we don't put it on there because, copyright stuff and YouTube gets weird. But you should still head over to the Clutch channel on YouTube and check them out. Or better yet, check out one of their live shows since they're touring right now if you're into going to some live music. And that reminds me because Neil, the lead singer of Clutch, is on the board of the ILF or InnocentLivesFoundation.org. So check out the work that we're doing there. Over 350 cases now handed into law enforcement, helping federal and local law enforcement and global law enforcement stop people who are trafficking children and harming children, creating child sex abuse material. So you can check out the work that Neil and our team are doing over there at InnocentLivesFoundation.org. And last but not least, just last month, we launched the brand new Human Behavior Con, or HubeCon for short. This year, we've brought some amazing trainers and experts and speakers in. We got Joe Navarro coming in. We have Amy Cuddy coming in, Amy Herman, Brittany Warren. Boy, the list goes on. Robin Dreek, R. Paul Wilson, Ian Rowland, Anne Marge Oud. There's just so many. It's just going to keep going and going. We have some unbelievable speakers and trainers for 3 days in March 2022 at the Rosen Center here in Orlando, where you can come and learn how to master all of these different communication styles, making your life a better life to live. So come on and join us there at the Human Behavior Con. You can check that out at humanbehaviorcon.com. Okay. Now, let's move on to the most exciting part of our podcast, which is the guest. And this month, I'm joined by Marilise de Villiers. I think I said that right. I probably messed it up. But anyway, I went too fast and I thought I would say it good. But she is a mindset and performance coach, a TEDx speaker, and a cybersecurity awareness, culture, and talent expert. Really interesting background, which we're going to delve deep into. At one time, she was a female executive of a Big Four consulting firm, but now she is the founder and CEO of her own company called Roar Coaching and Consulting. That company helps people find their purpose, find their power, and gives people the courage to speak their truth from internal sources. Can't wait to find out more about that. Thank you, Marilise, for joining me this month on the podcast.
So honored and so delighted to be with you, Christopher.
Thank you. With your wonderful accent, Christopher just sounds more appropriate. So,
I'm going to
take it.
Awesome.
So let's talk about this. You were an executive in a Big Four consulting firm, which sounds like an amazing career, an amazing job. And then you decide to start your own company doing coaching and consulting, which sounds like a hard path to leave when you were in this amazing career. What made you do that?
So it sounds great when you say it like that. It didn't quite work like that for me. It was out of desperation that I left my corporate career. I got to the point of severe burnouts. I think for a period of 6 months, I was getting anxiety attacks every day, and this was the result of 4 years of working in a very toxic environment and with a boss that bullied me.
That is really sad to hear, by the way, and terrible. And I think that's really a very valuable opening point, because sometimes it's easy to just look at the title and say, wow, you must have had a great career. Look at this. You work for this massive company. But then internally, you're dealing with that horrible struggle every day. How did you deal with being bullied by a person who's supposed to be managing you and above you?
So, I mean, it happened over a period of 4 years, and it was very much, I didn't quite understand it or actually even recognize it as bullying, probably for about 2 years. Over time, it's just that sort of daily chipping away at your confidence and that gaslighting, making you doubt yourself more and more and more. And of course, I have in my past the history with mental disorders. I've had an eating disorder. I had suffered sexual abuse as a child. So I think there was this shadow that was following me, which really made me feel that I'm not good enough. And in a way that showed up in my work. So I was the prime candidate, in terms of I tried so hard to prove myself. And the more he pushed me, the more I pushed myself. So that whole people pleasing part of me came out. So for a long time, it was okay because I was navigating it. But of course, my resilience, just got weaker and weaker because I wasn't really building my resilience muscle. I was really sort of, running on empty for the most part. And that sort of neural dissonance that I experienced on a daily basis, because you don't know what the mood is going to be like, whether it's going to be a good day or a bad day for him. That was the part that really, really, I think gave me that sort of that energy suck where I was like, I had no idea how he was going to show up. And obviously I wanted to protect my team from him. So it was very much for me as the person sort of shielding them and taking most of the raft.
I gotta first of all say how I don't even know the word to use. Like, it's not shocking's not the word. It's encouraging to find someone like you who can openly talk about some of your past. It's not easy to talk about having a disorder and having nervous breakdowns and having an eating disorder. So to me, it's such a valuable lesson, because to see that now you have a company that helps empower people. I mean, this is your mission in life, but you came from such a rough start in life with sexual abuse and then an eating disorder, and then having this person who's basically abusing you on a daily basis for so long. How did you escape from those things to turn into a person who now can help other people find their strength internally?
And this is beautiful, because this is exactly what Roar is about, so Roar was really my gift. It came out of my life experience. And I think the combination of different types of abuse, so the bullying, the sexual abuse, the self-abuse, as a result, it's all different forms of abuse, but I always say abuse is abuse, full stop. And the invisible scars cut deep. And so for me, it was that sort of being able to make sense of it and to turn my mess into my message. And I always say that your message is for you first, and then it's for others. And so Roar was really my gift in the way that I've been able to create my best life in terms of how I turn things around. And so, as I say, it's on purpose. So I really discovered and deeply connected with my purpose, which is to help people live their best lives. And then in your power, because it's really that sort of ability that that you have inside of you, a higher self, and if you tap into that, and you tap into, in my case, my feminine power, which I know is an inside out power. And if I show up authentically, that's me being my best self. And then, of course, the third element, which is the courage to speak your truth. And that is what RAW is all about, because RAW is also a 4-step process for navigating difficult conversations, to have courageous conversations.
First, I got to say, I love that message you just said, turn your mess into your message. Yes. That's going to be the title of this podcast. That is first of all, an amazing anthem, right? That I think it helps so many people. Just that one sentence alone. I truly, I fell in love with that as soon as you said it. That's pretty awesome.
It's not mine.
It's not. Well, I'm going to give you credit for it because I heard it from you.
I have so many mentors that have used that in the past, so I don't know which one came up with it, but it's not mine, but I'm using it now because it's so true in my life.
And it's so powerful, right? Because for me, when I heard that, the first thing that came to my mind was the framing of your life, because it's easy. I mean, I have had similar situations to you in my young adult, young childhood and teenage and adult life. And it's easy to get stuck in a loop where you're just looking at the bad things that have happened to you. And if that's where your focus is, then it's like a never-ending cycle of, well, this happened to me, so I have to be this kind of person. So I'm this kind of person because this happened to me, and then it happens again. And well, this happened to me because I'm this kind of a person. And it's like this never-ending cycle. So how did you escape that cycle of abuse where you were even abusing yourself? How did you get out of that?
And this is the day I left my corporate career, and it wasn't because I wanted to. It's because I was publicly demoted in the boardroom in front of my whole team. So he left me no choice. I mean, for a few days, I kind of still thought, oh, I can do this. There was that part of me of, I'm resilient. I'm not a quitter. And, I can conquer this situation. And really that already was a form of self-abuse, because it was like I was really not in the right headspace. I couldn't carry on working in that sort of environment. But yeah, so I had that little faint voice inside me that said, enough is enough. So I really got to that point where I was like, rock bottom, enough is enough. And realizing that I had to take control of my own life. And so obviously being jobless, so the first time in my life for 20 years, I built a corporate career. I was on the train every day to London, 5 days a week. I'm a mum. I've got 2 children. I've always been juggling. I've always been in control. And suddenly I'm at home, and work became such a big part of my identity that I felt completely lost. And the 3 things I did was, and it's still 3 things I do every day, but this is the sort of the initial things that sparked my recovery in a way, was first of all, I had to get really honest with myself. So I had to really hold the mirror up and take responsibility for the part that I played in how that relationship, played out. Second of all, I had to, I really reconnected to my purpose. So got really clear on, who I wanted to become, in this lifetime. What is that legacy that I want to live every day? And the third element was to get help. And that was the thing that really sparked my sort of bounce back, if you want, bounce back and beyond, I always say, because that was the piece. So I started working with a transformation coach, and she helped me with my nutrition, with my exercise, so general mindset and exercise principles and just a long term. So I went into that sort of program with her. It was a 6-month program, very, very intensive program, where I said, I want to get into the best shape of my life for life. And as a result of that, I have actually maintained over the last 3.5 years the results, because that was my mentality. And that's the part of me that's not negotiable. My food and my nutrition is not negotiable. So I really have to maintain my good health habits in order to stay on top of things. So get honest, get clear, and get help.
Okay, first, there's so much to unpack there. First, your first step, I truly appreciate the idea about getting honest with yourself about your role because anyone listening to this story would not want to assign blame to you for any of this, right? To have someone who's that abusive to you in your life, it would be ludicrous for me to sit here and go, yeah, but what role did you play in that? I couldn't even imagine that. But yet from my own life, I can see where to apply that. Like to say, yeah, okay, so I had some really crappy circumstances in my childhood that were out of my control, but how I let them affect me later on was fully in my control. And it's too easy to blame others. It's too easy to say, well, I was that way because, somebody did this, and it's too easy to have that causal statement. But I love the way you put it, is to like sit back and be really honest. Like, where did I flaw here? And that is so powerful, because to be able to sit back and look and say, I could have stopped this, or I could have changed this, or I could have changed my frame or attitude. Now that puts some onus on me, which means I have the power to change. It's a beautiful thought, really.
And it's exactly that. You take back your power when you can get out of that blame mentality, and when you get out of that survival mentality, and you realize that you are the creator of your life. And as you say, you can't, necessarily control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. Then you've got something to work with. Yeah. And it's that sort of thing of then forgiveness. You do forgiveness for yourself. So if I forgive someone, it's actually the gift I give to myself first and foremost. Because if I have that sort of blame game going on, that energy that I expend to blame is valuable energy that you can throw into other things and more productive things. But yeah, it didn't happen overnight. Hey, it's still a journey. Like, I'm still working on it. It's something I'm definitely going to work on till the day I die, because I know that, there's always something, there's always a next level.
I love the third point, mainly because it really touches me personally. When COVID started and we were all quarantined and shut in, I was listening to this program that was talking a bit about keeping your mental health better during quarantines. And one of the suggestions was to find a hobby. And before that, I was traveling maybe 70% of the week. Like, I was always on the road, always in a plane. And I used that as an excuse to be unhealthy. I was just too busy to be healthy. And then we had COVID, and I stopped traveling, and I started doing things like growing some vegetables in my yard, and I planted some fruit trees. And I couldn't get over how out of breath I was just doing simple things, digging a small hole to plant a small tree. And I was like, felt like I was going to pass out. And I'm like, I'm only 40 something years old. What the heck's wrong with me? This is ridiculous. So I did exactly what you said, is I found a trainer. And I committed to not another fad diet, which is what I was trying, not another quick get skinny scheme. I committed to him saying, help me become healthy for the rest of my life, not for the next 6 months. And I love that. I've lost 38 kilos in the last year, and I've been routinely working out, and I feel better. And it is so true. Like what you just said is so accurate. It's like when you get focused on your health, it helps you deal with so much more mental stress and other things. It's kind of fascinating. I didn't put all those pieces together. Like, you put them together in a nice little neat package of 3 things. And I'm like, wow, that makes so much good application, because I actually started doing these things, but not because of having some great insight like you, just kind of fell into it. That's really cool.
And it's great. I mean, because my point about this is a life for life piece. I mean, I have literally saw that same transformation coach this morning. She's a good friend now, but I saw her for the first time in a sort of professional capacity this morning, where I went for a weigh and a measure, and I'm going to be doing some sessions with her, because I need that accountability, because I need to get back into my. I mean, I'm a little bit crazy. I train quite hard, and I'm always like, I aspire to train like an athlete. That's my thing. I love working out, and I love pushing my body. So I recognized that I was falling back into, I was just that extra glass of wine and more regularly during the week. And it's been a result of being at home and not really have anything to look forward to. I think for me, it's been a case of a bit of a stuck in a rut kind of feeling. But yeah, so I kind of, put on my accountability, my big girl pants today. And I hopped on the scales. It's something that I'm petrified of scales with my history. I just hate a number. So, I did that. And you know what? It was fine. It was good. It was okay. And I'm excited about, dropping that extra couple of kilos, which I kind of picked up, and it's not a big deal, it's checking in with yourself and catching yourself and recognizing the benefits. I think that you hit the nail on the head. The momentum that you gain from having good health, physical health, it really helps with your mental health, and the energy that you have to show up and to do your best work. It's incredible.
I'm a huge Scotch fanatic, right? So I love Scotch and whiskey and things like that. And it was not uncommon a couple years ago that in the evening, that's the way I would end my night. Have a whiskey, go to bed, right? And now, because of this new health initiative, I'll look at my step counter and go, oh man, I'm 3,000 steps low. And I have this accountability because I got to tell my trainer, I got to tell Ben, man, I didn't make it. And he's going to be like, why? Why didn't you make your 3,000 steps? I mean, I got a treadmill right here on my desk. So now I'll find it's like 10:30 at night. And I'm like, I gotta go for a walk. And I'll go for a walk and not end it with any alcohol. And I'll end it with steps and then go to bed. And I sleep better. I wake up better. It's that what you said, that accountability piece is just so important. And that's affected me down the line in ways, it's affected me, family, work, thinking, my calmness, all of it. It's kind of amazing. So how did you come upon this like trifecta of things? Is this something you just tried and then you said, this worked for me, so I'm going to make this into my, like the ROAR concepts? Or was this study and research? Like, how did you come up with these?
So it's actually a really beautiful process, and I can't really take that much credit for it because I think it was kind of the universe aligning for me in a way too. But it's very much, the journey started with me leaving my company and thinking I'm the only person that's ever been bullied, ever. Like, I didn't recognize it as something that was such a big problem in organizations. I mean, and then I started speaking to friends and colleagues and very senior executives in their respective organizations, very, very high performers, and absolutely shocked because most of them had a sort of relatable story to share with me. And I think that made me really angry. That made me really actually, that sort of, we've got to do something about this. And that's when I sort of decided to write my book. And sort of at the same time, I decided to become a certified high performance coach. I've always wanted to become a coach, but it was never a reality for me. So, it was all kind of instinct based decisions. None of it was strategic. It was kind of feelings that I got. So I kind of sort of figured it out along the way. So I published my book, Roar, How to Tame the Bully Inside and Out, at the end of 2019. And of course, the first 3 chapters of the book is all about the context of workplace bullying. What is workplace bullying? And putting it into the context of narcissism, and recognizing the signs, spotting the bully, that sort of thing. But the remaining sort of 4 chapters, so chapters 4 to 8, is all about the Roar blueprint. So it's making your best life a reality, and it's got 4 key components. So it's igniting your authentic purpose, winning your inner game, so your thoughts and your feelings, winning your outer game, your words and your actions, and then finding your roar. So finding that courage to speak your truth. And that was the sort of the start of the blueprint. So it's not positioned in the book as a blueprint, but then after the book was published, I did a ton of work around further research and developing my product and refining, taking messy action, imperfect action, because that's the other thing. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So, so it's kind of just putting yourself out there and surrendering more, and then just, recognizing that, this is a calling. This is not just a job or a career. This is a calling for me at least it is.
That's a beautiful thought. And then, so the book comes out, and then you decide that you want to start a company that now takes that next level to the coaching, where you're actually personally working with people to help them achieve these goals. What have you found as the, and this may be a hard question, but like, what have you found as like the overwhelmingly common problem that people have when you first start working with them on this kind of stuff, the bettering themselves and finding their truth? The
inner game. It's the psychology. 80%. Every single person who comes to work with me, and once they've done a program with me, talk about how they've changed that conversation that they're having with themselves. Because I think unfortunately for many of us, for most of us, dare I say, the relationship with ourselves is the most toxic relationship that we'll ever be in. And, it's that sort of thing of, would you speak to someone else the way you speak to yourself? And so there's a lot of people come into my program with a lot of stuckness and a lot of limiting beliefs around, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not wanted. There are so many different stories, old stories. And so we do a lot of work. So ROAR actually, the 4-step process. So ROAR actually stands for recognize, observe, assert, redirect. So it's that sort of recipe that you can apply for a difficult conversation, but not only for conversations with other people, it's also for that conversation that you're having with yourself. So yeah, absolutely. I think people really recognize, and it comes back to holding the mirror up and getting honest and taking full responsibility for your life. It comes right back to that first step. And really developing really mastering your mindset, mentality.
That's beautiful. And I love the acronym. I should have asked. I didn't even realize. I love the acronym that it stands for those things. What a nice, every time you say it, I keep thinking about Katy Perry, and she needs to she needs to sing your theme song for you,
Please, can we make it happen? Because you are the millionth person that says this, and I'm like, I would love to be able to do it. So can we just make it happen, please?
Listen, Katie, if you're listening to this podcast by any chance, right? If there's just a 1% chance that you're listening to this, reach out to us. This would be an all epic adventure. Your song would fit this perfect. It's all about empowerment. It would be great.
I listen to that song almost daily. And I just I'm manifesting it.
So yeah, that's an interesting take. Is I would imagine in my head when I asked the question, I said, it's got to be something about internal, because I think that would be the hardest part of that change. It's I found even the exercise portion was easier than changing my self-view. I would take these progress pictures for my trainer, and he would be like, oh my gosh, do you see the difference? Do you see this? And I'm like, no. And he's like, come on, tell me you can't. And I'm like, no, it's just, there's hardly any change. Right. And then one day my daughter, she's amazing. She took a picture of me from a year ago and put it next to a picture of me there. And that's the first time I'm like, oh my gosh, when I actually see it now. I just wasn't, and I was just telling myself, yeah, okay, well, you're doing good, but not much is changing. And then when she forced me to see it, all of a sudden it was like this veil came off my eyes, and I'm like, wow, I actually did change. I didn't believe it at first. And now I went back to my trainer, and I'm like, okay, I see it. And now since then, what you said is accurate. It's now like changing this dialogue internal. And it's not like me sitting around going, you're awesome, not that, but it's like just not saying, hey, you haven't done enough. It's like saying, okay, yeah, you're doing something.
And it's
that is hard.
Exactly. And it's self-compassion. There's a wonderful book by Tara Brach. It's called Radical Compassion. And her 4-letter acronym is actually RAIN. I think it's still better than ROAR, for the inner dialogue, at least. It's a wonderful, wonderful process. And she's an absolute, fundi and on sort of meditation. So her thing is meditation and sort of that calmness that you have within. And I'm incorporating a lot of her work into my approach as well, because I just love it. I think it's phenomenal. But it comes back to kindness, because when I published my book, I all I wanted was to bring more kindness into the world, kindness to self and kindness to others.
Yeah. So what would you suggest to somebody? Like, let's say somebody's listening to this podcast and they're like, this all sounds great. I just don't even know how to start. Like, I don't even know what to do to make that change. What would be like maybe one suggestion you would give them to just start today?
And this is the classic overwhelm, because we all have so many things that we contend with on a daily basis, right? So you get it's really vague, because you sort of just trying to keep the balls in the air type of thing. So where I would start is to really identify that one thing that is really that thorn in your flesh, that thing that is really bugging you, and just make that first small step and just start with one thing. So this could be in your professional life, it could be in your personal life, and it could be around your health, it could be around, your spirituality, there could be any aspect of your life, because I'm all about making your whole life work, so it's looking across all the aspects of your life. Career is just one element, our professional identity is just one element of who we are. There's so many different facets, but I would suggest that you start with one thing and master one thing, and then the next thing and the next thing. The problem is, I think we try to do too much, and we have this all or nothingness going on. So the moment we don't stick to that plan that we put out for ourselves, it's an epic fail. And, we completely throw the baby out with the bathwater. So it's that sort of, I said earlier, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So it's actually focusing on the progress and not the perfection. So progress over perfection every day for me now. That's kind of one of my mantras, progress, not perfection. And that's so important, because, consistency is trumps everything. If you can just be 80% consistent in whatever that one thing is you decide to do and to tackle, and not to beat yourself up if you've got a bad day, if you've had a bad day, you definitely, that's a winning recipe.
I love it. It's when you said before that when you left your corporate career and then you found out that other people had similar stories to yours, because you had thought, I'm the only person who's ever been bullied, right? And I think that's easy to do, to think that this feeling or whatever you're going through is unique to just you. I've done that before, right? Where you think, well, there's no way Marilise can think she's not good enough. I mean, look at her. She's wonderful, and she's talented, and she's got success, and she's an athlete and all of this. And then you've talked to the person and you find out, wow, they feel the same way as I do. So I think that's empowering, what you just said. It's like realizing that other people have gone through this, and that if you just focus on one thing for progress, that's powerful, because I find myself doing what you said before, which is I need to perfect this piece of my life, and I'm not accepting until I'm perfecting it. And that is damaging, because I'll never be perfect. It's impossible. There's always something to learn. There's always something better to do. And you chase on that hamster wheel and never reach the end.
Absolutely. And it's that sort of, it's that running on the treadmill, but going nowhere.
It's, It's funny how sometimes when you hear something from someone else in a different field, how you can correlate so many different things in your life. Like my trainer, his name is Ben. He's from Ireland. He'll say things like, "So how bad is it if you have a couple slices of pizza on the weekend?" And I'm like, "Oh, it'd be terrible. Like, it ruined my whole diet." And he's like, "No, wrong." He's like, "Now, if you do that every day, yeah, then you're going to be back to where you were. But once in a while, if you do that, then it's not the end of your life." And I'm like, "Wait, you don't care about that?" And he's like, "No, why would I care?" He's like, "You're a human. You got to enjoy life."
Exactly.
He's like, and I'm like, oh, it's just such a change, like, to meet someone like that. I've worked with people before that it's like, if you look at a carb, you're the devil, and he's just like, "Go ahead, just do it." He goes, "Just don't do it every night. And when you sit down, before you have your pizza, have a chicken breast or something. And that way you only have one slice of pizza instead of 5, And I'm like, it's just so balanced. And there was a question I had in that, which is, how do you suggest people find that balance when probably most of us, from what you're saying, have spent most of our lives being completely imbalanced with ourselves? How do we find that?
So I think this is for me personally, it's that connection I have with myself and getting really still, finding moments in the day. So I'm meditation is progress for me. It's not something I've done for very, very long, but I've been doing it kind of consistently, I would say, over the last year. Again, 80% rule. But it's that sort of, for me, I notice now the difference in how I show up, where I've had my moments in the morning and the evenings where I've done my meditation, for example. And this is the thing that works for me. And it's not necessarily going to work for everybody. And I think this is the beauty of life, is that we each have the things that are unique to us that work for us. But it's important that we're always on that journey of discovery to find the things that work for us, and that we're constantly curious. But it's that, ultimately, I think, is that connection with self and not denying yourself emotions. So if you are upset, if you are angry, if you are afraid, it's okay to feel angry and upset and afraid. The problem comes in when you deny yourself those feelings, when you put those feelings into a little box, or if you overwhelm yourself with those feelings. But if you can feel those feelings, if you can sit with those feelings and you can work through those feelings, then at least you're not ignoring them, you're allowing them, and you can at least work through it and you can move forwards. So I think that's really one of the things that's really made a difference for me.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I have a couple of closing questions, but I want to ask, this is kind of personal, but how has this life change for you affected your kids?
I think they really love how I'm showing up, and, they are a lot more engaging with me. After I left my job, I realized that my relationship with my husband and my 2 boys were absolutely at rock bottom. They learned to cope without me, essentially. They didn't need me anymore. So I really had to work really hard for at least a year to win them back. But and I think that was the biggest lesson that I've learned, is to prioritize myself on my list of priorities. Because if I show up as the best version of me, then everybody around me thrive. So I think it's fair to say that they are thriving as a result too.
I love that, because it's such a positive influence on those that are closest to you. So it's almost like you can see such a wonderful benefit by taking those actions and seeing it in your own family first.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those are the most, I've learned the hard way that those are the most, so Heine and the boys are my precious, non-negotiables as well. It's like the most important job that I have is to be a mum and a wife.
So one of the things we ask people on this show is about mentors. You said before you had so many, but can you pick out just a few that you would say, without those people, you just would not be here today? Like, who do you consider your greatest mentors?
Of course, it's family, so if I think about my mum and my dad, and I think about my grandmother and my grandfather, two of them in particular, so on each side of the family, ultimately those people have massive influences on your life. And I've taken some real positives away, in my lifetime, and the constant encouragement and advice that I've been, getting from them. But I think more recently, it's very much been in my quest to finding the best version of me. I've been studying with the likes of Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi. I'm now working with Maya Kumarota. She's a transformational teacher. So they're all amazing mentors and teachers that are inspiring me every day. And, they always say you become the sort of average of the top 5 or the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And so I think it's really important to think about, who do you spend time with every day? And are those the people that inspire you and that motivate you to be the best version of yourself? Yeah, so I have so many amazing people in my life now, but I'm conscious about it, and I've made decisions to work with those people. And I think for me, that's really been a major shift in my life.
I love that point too. It's kind of goes back to like what if you had good parents, what they told you when you were a kid, like who you hang out with is who you're going to be, right? So if you're hanging out and learning from some of these great minds, like you mentioned, then you're going to be more like them, as opposed to everyone who's maybe negative or down or unhealthy or things like that. That's fascinating. Besides your book, which we're going to add to the show notes, you already mentioned one called Radical Compassion, but are there other books that you would recommend? We love, our listeners are big readers, so we love to have book recommendations. Are there maybe one or two that you think are really worth reading?
I mean, one of my all-time favorites is Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. I think for me, one of the books that really was transformational a couple of years ago was the How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself, which is Joe Dispenza. And this is the piece where I've really discovered the power of, my thoughts and manifesting my reality through my thoughts. And what you focus on is really, what manifests in your life. And that was quite mind-blowing. And then, I mean, this is for the ladies out there, but there's a wonderful book that was recently published. It's called Unbound. And it's the sort of ultimate guide, I think, for women and finding their power. And it's a lady called Kasia Urbaniak. Absolutely wonderful book. So, I mean, I can go on. I think this year alone, I've read about 20 books. So wow. I read a lot. But yeah, I'll stop there.
No, those are some great ones. So I have not heard of How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself or Unbound. So I love recommendations because I'm also an avid reader. So I always add fascinating sounding books to my reading list too. So thank you for those
You're welcome.
Suggestions.
But Radical Compassion, if you really want to work on self-love and self-compassion, I think is superb. For mental health, it's absolutely superb.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. If people wanted to know more about you, about your company, about your consulting, all those things, where can they go to find out more?
So my website, Marilise-de-Villiers.com. So it's, you can contact me through my website. It's probably the best way to do it. I'm on social media. So all the different platforms. My main platform is LinkedIn. I tend to use LinkedIn the most. So yeah, you're welcome to drop me a note. And
you have a podcast yourself, right?
I do.
Yeah. So you have the Roar podcast.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so
I
that
do.
you can
That's
find
also
out
on my
information.
website.
Yeah, I was going to say, find it out on our website and follow and listen, and you'll get a lot more content like you heard today from Marilise. So that would be amazing.
Thank you.
Man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing your life and your journey. I think there's going to be so many people, at least in our industry and our listeners, that are going to be helped by hearing some of the things that you went through and how you escaped from them and how you bettered yourself by doing it. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and talking with me today.
You're so welcome. And I just want to say one final thing, is to everybody out there, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. And all you have to know is that next step. You don't have to know the entire journey. You just need to know the next step to take. And just take that step, and you'll have a wonderful life.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the Human Element series of the Social Engineer podcast. Next month, we're going to have a good friend, Anna Marj Oud, and we'll be talking about her company, the Behavior Company, and the things that she does that will fit with this topic just beautifully, all about conflict resolution. So we look forward to you joining us next month, and we really hope you enjoyed the show this month. Thanks, everybody.